Hi everyone, I think we are live now. Welcome to another Memgraph community call. It's me, Katarina, from Developer Experience team at Memgraph, and today I have Toni Lastre from Platform team with me. So he's head of platform at Memgraph. This actually means he's basically the main person behind Memgraph Lab along with his team. So today he's going to share more about a feature in Memgraph Lab called GraphChat. He will talk about how to talk with your graph database. I think this is a quite common topic these days, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it because he's going to give us under the hood and a small demo showcasing this. But before we start with that, I will give you a small introduction to the topic. I did this also in a previous community call, but I feel like it makes sense we do this just because for everyone who joined and haven't seen this before or haven't heard about GraphRAG, RAG in general, I think it would be good to go over these topics. So just a small information to start. We have a chat here, we have a questions tab as well, and we have polls tab. This is our first time on this new platform, so bear with us as well. Please use the chat and questions tab to ask anything you like during the presentation. I will make sure to forward the questions to either myself or Toni, and we can stop and answer that. It's not a problem, so feel free to ask them as we go. And my colleague Mata will be posting in the polls section as well, so please check it out once it's out and answer them if you can. And I think that's enough. I see people are joining from everywhere. Like regards to everyone, I'm really happy to hear you came here from all over the world. And let's start. So to kick it off, let me share my screen. Okay. And I think you are seeing my presentation now. So let's kick it off with GraphRAG. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the whole term of GraphRAG and RAG, but I guess most of you are familiar with LLMs. So you probably used at least ChatGPT, which actually has the GPT as an LLM, large language model running in the background. And probably are using it now more than you're using, for example, Google. Yeah, it's quite common these days. So let's give a small introduction into how it actually works and what are its limitations. So usually you ask a question that is quite general, and this model, for example, GPT as an LLM, is trained on a vast amount of data. So it usually gives you a good answer to any kind of general question you might have. But nowadays, a lot of people are facing challenges with having their internal data and want to ask questions about that. For example, if you have like a set of medical records and you want to ask questions about those medical records, such as which patients had similar symptoms to patient Mark and how were the treatments concluded. If you were to ask this to the ChatGPT, you basically wouldn't get an answer that makes sense because ChatGPT isn't aware of all of the medical records you have internally. So you might come to an idea to give ChatGPT all of the medical records. Let's say you type it in and you have like 200 pages or 400 pages and you want to send it to LLM and it will know the answer. But there are limitations there. So there is something called context window. This means that LLM has like limitation of, let's say, 8,000 tokens for the context. And this means that you cannot give it more than that amount of words as an additional context to provide an accurate response. So it's hard to determine which parts of my medical records should I provide, and do I even want to provide it to like an open model that it's somewhere outside and basically learns from my data. So this is an issue. And of course, if I were to give some amount of data, how should LLM know where to focus? Like what is relevant even from all of that documents, and where should it find the answer to the question I'm asking it? So to kind of resolve this challenge, there have been a lot of approaches nowadays. It's becoming more and more popular to come up with a good solution to this. And two most common approaches are retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and fine-tuning the model. So sometimes people combine these two approaches as well. I'm not saying you should use just one or another or something similar like that, but you should choose based on what you need. So let me explain that. Retrieval augmented generation includes retrieving relevant information from your data and then attaching that to the prompt, like an additional context, and sending that to LLM. So you still have to be careful that it fits within the context to get the accurate response. On the other side, the fine-tuning the model includes a learning process from your documents. So now you can notice the problem here. If your data is growing, so you have more medical records, you would need to retrain the model if you were to choose fine-tuning the model. So if your data is changing, especially if it's changing frequently, it would be better to go with RAG. Also, RAG is easier to set up because training the model is definitely not an easy task, and it requires a person within your team who definitely knows what they are doing. So these are a bit different approaches, and it really depends on what you need and what kind of team do you have. Today we are going to talk more about retrieval augmented generation, and it is a way to make LLMs more accurate and personalized to your specific data. So how this actually happens? As said, LLM wouldn't know the answer to this question directly. So what actually RAG does, it finds important parts. So it finds keywords like patient, similar symptoms, patient mark, and treatments. And then we want to retrieve relevant information to those keywords. So from all documents, find and pick what is relevant, append it to the prompt, and give it to LLM to form the answer. Now LLM gets this enriched prompt and can give you the correct answer. But in the background, what is actually happening, we have two steps. So first one, you are probably wondering, okay, I have all of this unstructured data. How do I even have it somewhere, a part of my system? You, of course, need to structure it somehow. You need to model it somehow, and you need to be able to retrieve it. How to find and extract relevant information is the second step of this process. So the end goal, as we said, is to find and pick what is relevant from all of your documents, then append it to the prompt and give it to LLM. So to structure and model the data is the first step. There are n different ways to do that. And the goal is to optimize to find and extract relevant information. And to do that, there is again like n different ways. And the goal is to find the most relevant data, but still this needs to fit to the context window, not too much because of those limitations of the LLM. So here are the examples of those combinations. As said, on the left, we have like n different combinations. On the right, we have n total different combinations. But mostly to structure and model the data, you can use in-memory structures such as graph structure, databases such as graph database and engines. And on the right side, to find and extract relevant information, you would probably do pivot search to find data pivots by similarity from the prompt important words. And you would do relevance expansion, meaning that you expand from that data pivots, and then you get even more relevant information to forward to the LLM. Now, when we want to introduce the topic of GraphRAG, we need to mention Microsoft's GraphRAG because they, in their research paper, mentioned this term and definitely set up ground for a lot of different researches and discoveries. And within their paper, they are doing this kind of combination with the graph structure and laden algorithm and vector database and vector search. So they are doing pivot search with vector search, and to expand relevance, they are doing laden because laden algorithm provides hierarchical community detection, and with that they get community summaries, and then the context is even better for the LLM to understand what are you asking and to give a more accurate response. So in general, not only when talking about Microsoft, but when talking about GraphRAG, GraphRAG is a RAG system that combines the strengths of knowledge graphs and large language models. But let's get this straight. What is a knowledge graph? So knowledge graph is a structured representation of information where entities and their relationships are organized to enable reasoning and insights. But to simplify it, when I'm seeing this graph, I can just read like Anna reported report for symptom A in disease A. So I can read it like a sentence and it's clear to me. So it's a knowledge graph. I get this semantic layer. On the other hand, if you have just a graph, it's a network of nodes and edges representing data without the added layer of meaning or semantics. And this semantics is important because LLM needs to understand this, and it needs to be clear to the LLM what is happening with your data. So we explained why knowledge graphs, but what is the actual strength of graphs, like having that data stored in a graph structure? So there is a relational context with this knowledge graph structure because you get those semantics. There is also improved retrieval accuracy with community detection, impact analysis, and so on. There is also multi-hop reasoning. This means that you can traverse through different data neighborhoods. There is efficient information navigation. You can do scanning subgraph instead of full data sets. And maybe the most important thing where you should consider a graph database and not only an in-memory structure is by having dynamically evolving knowledge. So if you have that, you need to update your data in real time, and you want that to be happening naturally, and everything just looks good and everything is persistent. And on top of that, if you were to have like dynamic graph algorithms which would update, for example, communities on the fly, that would be even better. So if you are especially running this in some kind of production use case, you would definitely require a database and then a graph database, which gives you additionally this graph structure is a really good choice for your GraphRAG. So to go back to the example that we had before, we have a prompt, we have an important words within that prompt, we would search for it in a graph, we would find the node mark, and then we would expand for relevant data. And as you can see from that information, we would add additional context to the prompt, which is being sent to the LLM. And now when talking about GraphRAG with Memgraph, you basically are storing your data, you are modeling your data from whether unstructured or structured source into a knowledge graph that is being stored into Memgraph. And then Memgraph, with its features, capabilities, and so on, can provide you with pivot and search and relevance extension, being a part of your whole GraphRAG system. And as you can see, in the end, you ask a question and get an answer. It sounds like simple, but it's definitely not a simple process. It includes a lot of puzzle pieces, but Memgraph is there to provide the best possible features for you to build a GraphRAG. I think that's it from my side. I hope that I made this introduction clear enough for everyone to understand the basics of a RAG and GraphRAG. And now I will give the floor to Toni, who will go next into the topic of GraphChat.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Kate, for the intro. You made my life easier now. So because like I will also go through some of the items with the GraphChat, and I will be referencing GraphRAG. So I think this will be really useful for you guys to figure out really what's going on. Okay, so let's get to the presentation. Let me know once you can see it. Cool. Okay, so what I want to talk about is the GraphChat, which is a feature in Memgraph Lab, but in general, how to talk with your graph database with the LLMs. So before we get into it, let's first align on this term that I just mentioned. So how to talk to your graph database with LLMs. Well, you can talk in any different ways, but I will go through one approach over here. So let's go segment by segment. So talking to your database. Well, pretty much that's a process that you have a query language, you run it on your database management system, and you get results back. For example, one example can be a SQL statement. You run it on the database, and you will get results probably in some tabular form. So this is just one example of how you are talking to your database in this sense, the relational SQL database. So if we focus on the graph database, so how do you talk to your graph database? Well, the query language is different, right? So it's not SQL anymore. In this scenario, we'll use Cypher. There are other languages that you can use to talk with your graph database, but in this sense, so we have a Cypher query language. You type in Cypher, you run it on the database, you get the results back. Cool. Okay, so we have one item left, which is with the LLMs. So we want to attach the LLM somewhere in this flow. So let's just attach it at the beginning of it. So we have a natural language that goes to the LLM. LLM generates query language that goes to the database, and we get the results. So that natural language will probably look something like this, like list users' names and their countries of origin. And then we expect for the LLM to generate the Cypher query, which will be running on the database to get the results back. And what's also cool is we can even go a step further and have natural language on the other side. So we can plug in our results to the LLM and pretty much give it a task to summarize the results, the initial questions, and everything else. And then we will have, we will start from the natural language, go through several different integration points, and we are back to the natural language, where the response will be like users are, and so on and so on. So this over here is it's just one approach. You can combine these pieces however you want. You can have multiple LLMs. You can have evaluation system somewhere. You can query different databases and then join those results, ask LLM to join results. There are so many different approaches. And this is one approach. And this is the approach that GraphChat uses right now. So let's go back and see how it all started, the history of the GraphChat. What's really cool is it actually started with a community call, similar like this one over here. So it happened a year ago, where a really awesome guy, Brett Brewer, an ex-VP for Microsoft, he had a community call about querying Memgraph through the LLM. So he was using LangChain, and he was pretty much doing what the GraphChat is today, having the initial prompt, querying Memgraph with that initial prompt, generating Cypher query, getting those results back, and then creating the summary. And after that community call, a few months later, our team generated LangChain integration. So other people can start integrating the same process that Brett showed into their own ecosystem, into their own workflows. So we added the class, which pretty much wraps Memgraph inside, so you can use it and do pretty much what GraphChat is doing right now, which is sending queries in natural language, getting responses back in the same plain English. And after the LangChain integration, we are thinking, okay, so we can pretty much add that to the lab too, add some face to it, and that's how the GraphChat was born, the first version, where you can query your database in natural language, and you can get response back and even see what the LLM was doing behind the scenes. What was the query that was generated? What were the results? Because it can really help you out debug what's going on under the hood. So, for example, this is just an example. This is the Pandora Papers dataset, and you can see in the orangey reddish bubbles, that's questions from you as a user, and then you can see the response from the LLM. And down below of each response, you can see the query and the results that were generated through it. So pretty much when we talk about GraphChat, it's really there for you to uncover those data insights by asking questions in plain English, like simple conversation, no Cypher queries. Well, this will be different now. Usually demos are at the end of the presentation, but now we'll do it differently. We will go to the demo immediately right now, and then I will go back to the under the hood stuff, how it's working under the hood, challenges, and some future upgrades that will be coming up, because I feel like you might be following easily after you see how it works and all of that. So, and I feel sorry for all the people that will be checking the recording and then going just back at the end, because demos are always at the end. But right now it will be in the middle of the presentation. Okay, so right now over here I have two Memgraph Labs. On the left side, this is the current GraphChat that you can pretty much download immediately and start playing with it, integrate. You just need to integrate with the one of the LLM providers, Azure, OpenAI, or Oyama, any local model. And on the right side is something that we are still working on. It's the new GraphChat improvement. So I will show you like how pretty much the old version and the new one are working on the same data sets, same queries and everything else. And then we will dig deeper later on, what are the differences, how they work, and so on. So we'll go through a few of the data sets that you all have. It's actually here in the datasets tab. Right now, I loaded the Pandora papers. So it's actually the Pandora papers, like offshore entities, leaders and officials, money laundering, and everything else regarding that. And before going into that, let me show you the schema. So we have the officers. That's usually like the leader, a person, and they are officer of some entity, company, mostly, and they are somehow related to the country. Either they are from that country, they are related to that country, or their company has jurisdiction in that country. So that's pretty much simple model, and let's go into it. Like this is just the initial query, like how many nodes are in the data set, and you can see that the queries are a little bit different, but pretty much they are doing the exact same stuff, which is counting the number of nodes. Let's go with something else. So let's ask this one, for example, which officers are from country France. I will copy it because I will give that to the another one too. And let's see how they do. So, okay, the first one, yeah, we have Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Cool, yeah, this is the correct query, and you can see the query over here as well. We'll go to something that will become a bit harder to handle. For example, what the current GraphChat cannot do is if I ask, can you tell me more about him? The problem is with the current GraphChat, it doesn't have any context information, so it will struggle with him, of course, yeah. So it's not able to resolve that compared to the new one. So the new one is actually checking some previous conversations, and it can really follow up the current conversation that you have. So it figured out that we are now talking about Dominique, and it gets all the stuff what Dominique is like. It's associated with Pandora papers, SVM, corporate services, linked to France, and so on, so on. So what's really cool is you can see the query down below. You can see the results that were generated also from there. Let's see, let's see, for example, how many connections are there connected to country USA. Let's see. I'll show you, for example, the differences when you are talking with the GraphChat. So both of the GraphChat versions said that there are no connections to the country USA. And the problem is that they are searching the name USA. And if I go back to the GraphChat, and if I go to the country, you can see that there is a name and there are ICO codes. So probably there is country USA, but the name is not USA. So whenever you use a GraphChat, you really need to somehow guide the GraphChat through pretty much how you structure your data. It doesn't need to be complex. For example, we can just say, let me just copy this so I can just reuse it. So connected, let's say connected to country with ISO code US. And let's see what you have to say, and let's see what you have to say. Now it's working actually. So because the GraphChat actually figure out that, oh, the US actually is for the ICO code. So it can really map and fix the way how it searches through your data set. So it figure out and find the pretty much those connections that are in the US. And I can now ask, like, I know, can you tell me more about those connections? So we know that this one won't be able to figure out that because it cannot reference what those connections mean. But on the other sense, so now we have like, oh yeah, those connections, how they are tied to Pandora papers. And you can pretty much see the companies, the entities, and everything else. And this is pretty much the GraphRAG part. For example, the query above is not GraphRAG because it's doing the aggregation of the data set. Down below, why is this GraphRAG? Because I asked a totally general question. It fetched all the information needed and created a summary of that relevant information. So you can see like GraphChat actually does both. It does the aggregation queries as well as GraphRAG queries. And it really depends how you format the question. For example, I can now, ask, let's pick, let's pick Horatio Cartes. Like, tell me more about Horatio. And I think this one will also be tell me more about, let's see how this one does. Okay, so we have like he's associated with Pandora Papers, some company. We have a bit different answer, but pretty much they did a good job on both ends. So yeah, this one actually collected way more stuff into. So this one returned only the information about the officer, but this one actually get the officer, meaning the person, all the entities, all the countries, collected everything, and we have all of that over here, and this is how the answer was structured from that. Okay, let's, for example, something that we are still working on, and it's not quite there, is make GraphChat good at handling graph, like shortest path, those kind of queries. For example, if I ask, like, I don't know, what's connecting this guy from France and Horatio, probably it won't be able to find the answer yet. So because it doesn't know really how to get all those together. It tried to create a query that they both are connected to the same company, but actually there is no such connection there. So what we want to actually do in the background is really do the BFS or DFS search and see the full path that connects those two people together. So that's something that will be really hard with the GraphRAG because it depends on how big the path is. If they are pretty close to each other, then the community detection algorithms will figure it out. But overall, this is where we are at. This is the challenging part, how to make it working with something that's a bit more complex in terms of graph traversals and so on. Let's see, for example, I know which other countries from Europe have at least one connection. Let's see what and I'm really curious what the old one will do. Okay, cool. So we have countries with at least one connection listed down. Yeah, so they're pretty much doing the same thing, pretty much. And let's see, like, can you, and this is now not a GraphRAG query, can you, like, I don't know, give me only top 5 of those countries sorted by number of connections? Let's do that. Yeah, this one won't work because those countries. Let's do of countries in Europe. Okay, so this one, let's see the query. The query looks great. And this one, well, yeah, this one is so-so. Yeah, it's pretty much not a good query, but this one is actually working pretty well. So the problem with the current version of the GraphChat is you need to give the full context within one single question, while for the one that will be coming out soon, it's actually remembering the context that you talked about, and you can play with that context, because if you go to the configuration edit, you can see like the conversation history and how much further into the history you should go and collect all those conversations, and then you can increase this number or decrease it depending on how big the context window you want to have. Let me move to some other data set just to show you how some other pieces are working. Let's go to the data sets.
Toni, can we maybe answer a couple of questions?
Yeah,
We
sure,
have
sure.
interesting questions. Let me put this up on the screen. So yeah, I see the part of the question here. So basically, if we have a complex schema, this can significantly slow down the LLM and increase the cost significantly, as it has to process this entirely. So this is how it works, right? Is there a way where we can preview the tokens or costs for a certain query? Adarsh is asking.
Yeah. That's a great question. So, yeah, I will talk about those challenges after the demo. I have really lined out all these challenges, and yeah, this is correct. The complex schema, it's not just problematic because of how complex it is, it's also really hard to regenerate it every time. In this last version of Memgraph, you have a feature where you can pretty much toggle and make schema pretty much always there. Your import will be a bit slower, but on the other hand, you have schema pretty much in real time. Not just for the LLM, but for any other situation. And regarding the tokens, so completely true. So what we are now doing is, in this new version of the GraphChat, is we have like the largest schema and the mid, like something in between, and really small schema. So what the small schema means, we'll only give like a list of nodes and relationships, and that's it. Like something in between will just have a list of properties. And the biggest schema that we will be sending is properties, types, and maybe a few examples. The problem with the subset is that it's really hard to know which subset should be sent to the LLM. Like if I'm, for example, if I'm asking here about the connection, I have really big, really large graph. Like it's really hard to know, okay, so which parts of the graph should I be sending to the LLM in regards of the schema? That's something where you need a few steps of pre-processing, mostly really tied to your business needs, where you would, for example, do any kind of pivot search. You find those pieces, you get the communities, okay, and then you only send those pieces to the LLM. But then the LLM won't be able to search even further from that. So you're actually adding pivot search, not only to get the relevant information around it, but also to get the schema around it. So that's the only way I can think of right now when you have any complex schema or really large schema and you only want to send a subset of it. But the problem there is how you can be sure that you send the subset that's needed to create a Cypher query. That's also, for example, why most businesses that are integrating GraphRAG now, they have pretty much strict schema. Okay, so they create a schema and they are aware of schema. So when they are creating a query, they know what's really needed there. It pretty much have a really solid structure with enough semantics in there where it's easier to extract those parts out. For the GraphChat, that's a bit harder to do because GraphChat should work on any kind of schema underneath. So it's really hard to make it specific for any use case there. But that's, I would say, just at the end, like it's a really good comment where we should provide tools and maybe some integration points where you could tweak those items there to get to the use case you wanna have.
And is there a way to preview the cost that is going to take for a certain query?
Actually, we have that like underneath because like what we do is we count the tokens, and then if we get the exception from the LLM that there are just way too many tokens in there, that's where we are actually starting to trim the prompt down as much as we can to lower the cost and actually to make the query going through. But that's a good suggestion. We could add that, just show it on the interface.
Yeah, to expose it, yeah.
Yeah, so you can get a sense of how many tokens have been used there. That's a great suggestion.
Okay, I hope that answers Adar's question. Nice to see you here, Adash. And yeah, another question is, are these tools available for community version or do they require a paid subscription?
They are available, like you can just download it and start playing with it. You will need to provide, like, for example, if you are using OpenAI, you will need to have a premium account there just so you can have the API key and then use it there. But really, few bucks will be enough for you to get it started. But from point of Memgraph, all of this is available in the community version.
But you can also connect to a local LLM and you can do that. But regarding Memgraph, GraphChat is not locked under any license. So just download Memgraph Lab and Memgraph and play with it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Now I'm going to, we can continue. I think it was a good way to answer some questions.
That's really good. Yeah, just keep sending the questions.
Keep them coming. Yeah, keep them coming.
Okay, let's go back. I just have two more demos to show you, like Europe backpacking. That's also a pretty, where is the schema, graph schema, just so you can see what it looks like. So we have a city with a bunch of data in there, and the country, I think it's pretty much the name. So like cheapest hostels, currencies, cost per night, and so on. And what we want to do is we want to see, and also if you are using the current GraphChat that's out there, whenever you change the underlying model, you should tick this thing over here because it needs to be aware that the graph schema changed underneath, then to use the new graph schema. So let's see, how much would it cost me to stay 2 days in Paris and 5 days in London? Maybe we should change that. I know, 5 days in Paris and 2 days in London. And let's see how it goes. And let's see with the other one. The other one always refreshes the graph schema, so I don't need to carry about. So yeah, they got it correct. So I'm not sure if it's correct, but they got the same number. And we can see the query. So they found the Paris, they found the London, they figure out the cost per night USD. Oh, they even figure out that they should use the US dollar for currency sign, which is pretty cool because you can see in the data, the USD is just in the name. It's not in any of the values over there. And we can also, like, can you tell me more about Paris? Let's do this. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how you go. So who is faster? Maybe this one. Okay, so this is also like a GraphRAG kind of query where we asked the general question about Paris, and we got, yeah, it's located in France, and there are various attractions, and so on, so on. And we even got the link, which is really cool. Price of travel. Yeah, the link is here also too. Really cool. So I know, like it's really cool how you can actually and what's cool is you can do like compare the things oh yeah, this won't work. Compare the things. Yeah, I'm not sure if this will work out in the, oh, let's see. Compare things about Paris and London. Let's see how you do. I'm not sure it will work, but this one should, because I can say compare the things you mentioned about Paris to London. So these things above. And let's see how they do on these two questions. Yeah, this one is really struggling to get the answer on comparing these, but I think it should generate something. Well, this one too. Okay, so it pretty much gets the London, gets the Paris. You can see over here. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm really happy that this happened because I can show you the feature in the new GraphChat. So over here, so we have a really big query. It's actually just doing unpacking of values, using and just connecting it with the London and then creating the final response. But over here, what's cool is it created the first query and it got the unbound variable London. You can see it matched the London over here, but it used the union. And union, when you use the union in Cypher, you need to redo the match again for the new stuff. And it got the unbound variable London, and it did the second attempt. And let's see what it did. Probably nothing. I don't see any change. And then it figured out that it needs to move match underneath union. So that's something new that's coming up in the new GraphChat is you can also edit that. So in the configuration you have like, oh yeah, it's not over here, but it will be like how many retries it can do. So it actually failed to do first one, failed to do second one, and then it figured out how to create the correct query and run it on top of Memgraph. Cool, and let's go to the last demo quickly. I'm gonna do TED Talks is pretty cool. So as you can see, I'm trying to use data sets that have some textual information in there. What I mean by textual is it's just not IDs and numbers and that's it. Like we need something that it can actually figure out and see what's going on. And let me just show you the schema. So the schema looks like, yeah, we have a speaker, have a talk. You can see name, description, title, speaker probably has a name. On some event, probably what was the tech talk, rating, tags, and so on. So let's go to the GraphChat. Let's see what we can ask. Like, what's the best rated talk? Let's do that, and let's do here. What's the best rated? Let me just. So do school. Ooh, wow, it's different. Moral roots of liberals. So it actually did the talks ratings, get that order by rating name. Yeah, so this is not valid query. What's also cool is you can run any of these queries and see it on your own, like what's going on, and you can see and maybe like remove the limits, and you can see that it actually sorted talks by rating, and rating is not a number, it's actually it uses rating name. And let's see this one, the better one. This one used user count. So this one is also not okay. It used like which one was rated the most, but not the best rated one. maybe we need to define what the best rate actually means. But what I really like about the new GraphChat is I can now just ask, can you tell me more about that talk? I don't need to specify which one because it will just continue the conversation. Over here, I need to actually get this one, and can you tell me more about talk? And let's see. And you can see like we got probably something got mixed. Yeah, this is, for example, how the old one, if you go out of the tokens, you will actually get the error, and you will see how many tokens we use. So this actually collected too much in there, and it didn't quite really work out with the actual query. And you can do yeah, actually, I'm not sure if I did the schema refresh. Let's see if that works. And yeah, it's not working. So it's really getting out of the limits of the tokens, and it cannot give you any answer. On this side over here, yeah, probably what happened is they got mixed because I'm using the same API to run both in parallel. So actually that talk was now the moral roots rather than those schools kill creativity. But we can also, I know, ask like here, I know what, like were there any other talks by the same speaker? Let's see what we will get over here. If we will get any other. Yeah, so you can see all the other talks that was given by the speaker, which is like really cool. And let's see this inspiring over here. Like you mentioned inspiring. What other tags are used the most? Let's see what we will get. You can see the inspiring here, and that's the tag. Yeah, the talk has a tag, and you can see all the other tags over here. So we have culture, technology, science. Cool. So what are the top 5 best rated talks described as finance? Let's see what we will get here. Okay, so it doesn't know the answer, and we can see the query. So it get the rating tag science, but they are not actually connected. So you can see the tag. Oh yeah, the top, actually, yeah, it is, but the problem is why I didn't get let's redo the question maybe differently. What are the top 5 best rated talks? Tagged with tag science. Let's see if this works. Yeah, now it works. So what I wanted to show you here is when you are talking with the GraphChat, you need to pretty much guide it, especially depending on how your schema is structured. So I have these names in my schema: tag, speaker, event. So you need to use those words so it can figure out how to structure the query correctly. Otherwise, it will just try different ways and see what works and what doesn't. So that's also something that's different from the GraphRAG queries, because in GraphRAG, you're pretty much asking general questions. It's doing the pivot search, finding relevant information, and so on. GraphChat, on the other sense, is it's doing like 2 steps. The first one is generating a Cypher query, which general GraphRAG systems are not doing, and then using that query to get to the end results. I will now get back to the presentation just to show you now under the hood how it actually works. So
we just have one question, Toni, before you start with that. So let me just put this here. So what are the hardware RAM, GPU RAM you're using for this demo? And the question is here because of the noticed latency that is a bit long. So what is your comment on that, and what do you think?
So actually, I'm running it on the MacBook, the M2, but the actual LLM stuff is not running on my laptop. So I integrated the OpenAI API. So I have the API key there, and actually the whole LLM stuff is running on their servers, and then I'm charged by each query. So actually, what you see, the lagging part, that's where we are actually waiting for the answer from the LLM. It's from the OpenAI API to get the response back, depending on how big the prompt is. I'll not show you how big the prompt can get, and it really depends on how big the prompt is, how long it will take to generate the final answer.
Yeah, and I think this answers the other question as well. So currently you're using OpenAI GPT, right? And you're going to talk more about the fine-tuning the Cypher.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm not using any fine-tuned model right now. So yeah, let me just show you like right now under the hood how it works. So you've seen this one. You ask a question, you get the response. You can see the query that was generated, and pretty much run that query also on your own and see what's going on. But the actual GraphChat flow, how it looks like. So we have a question, and we want to get the answer on top of Memgraph. So the first step is we need to get the graph schema from Memgraph. So we need to be aware of how things are connected in Memgraph. And then both the user question and the graph schema is sent to the LLM. The LLM will get back, will give us the Cypher query. We will run that Cypher query on top of Memgraph, and we will get those results. So pretty much results are like plain JSON results. And then we use the same user question, we get the results, and then we ask LLM again, like, hey, this is the question, these are the results in JSON format. Please, can you make a summary? Can you make an answer that's understandable? And then we have the final answer. And this is why it takes some time, because we are actually calling LLM twice in the process. And for example, this first part, the user question and graph schema, for example, this is how it looks like. So we start with what your task is. Like, this is what we are sending to the LLM. We have a small intro about what we want to achieve, rules, like use the schema down below, don't explain anything, give us only the Cypher statement, don't do any explanations or apologies. If you need to go outside of the database system, I know, say that you cannot do such things and so on. Then we add the schema, and then we add the user question at the end. And this can be pretty much like like someone asked, like, what should I do if my schema is really large? Because this prompt can be really large, and you've seen it right now in this last demo where the number of tokens was 10,000, but my limit on the model was 8K, so 8,000. So I was 2,000 tokens above the current limits that I'm able to use from the LLM. So we are actually structuring the prompt, sending to the LLM, and then getting the response back. Another one, so this one, the user question and Cypher query, that's simpler because it's usually heavy. Like, I just need a summary in English. This is the question. These are the results. The results are not structured. Make sense of it. That's pretty much the second prompt that we are sending. You can actually see this prompt also on any of the LangChain or Llama index integrations. So you can see it there as well. And when I was talking about the GraphChat, this is what I meant by two-phase process. So we have the phase one, which is Cypher generation, and then we have the phase two, which is actually creating the summary of all these results. So it's actually a two-phase Gen AI system. And that's why it makes it really hard to fine-tune all these, because it really depends on how well the Cypher query will be generated, because the second phase depends on the quality of the results from the first phase. And now getting back to, Katarina was giving you an intro to the GraphRAG, and we were going through the demo, and I'm sure you probably asked, like, what the hell, like, why have we talked about GraphRAG, and then we get the GraphChat, and then this guy talks, oh yeah, this is a GraphRAG query, this is not a GraphRAG query. Like, I'm sure there might be some confusion in there, and I want to just give you some clarity what's going on there. So, is GraphChat a GraphRAG? Yes and no, but it really leans more to the no side, because like we have a graph. So why it leans more to the no side? It's pretty much because of this text to cipher part that doesn't exist in like standard GraphRAG system. Let's go even deeper. So these are the flows. So the GraphChat flow, we just gone through it. So you have a question, you get a schema, you call the LLM, you get the Cypher query, you run that Cypher query on any graph, you get the results, you call the LLM again, and you get the answer. GraphRAG, so how it usually goes, you have a question, and you have a context query, which you own. It's not generated by LLM, so you own it. Or if it's generated, then you probably own evaluation system, or you own some kind of piece where you are aware of the data that's in there. So you do pivot search, you get the relevant information in there, and then you call the LLM to summarize all of that. And now, like similar to all those games, find the difference. Like if GraphChat can be GraphRAG, but also mostly it's not GraphRAG. My question is like, if it can be, like, when? What should be there where we can say, yeah, it's a GraphRAG right now? And actually, these are the two pieces that are different in these two images. So any graph, it cannot be any graph. It needs to be knowledge graph. It needs to have some semantics on it, because as you saw in the demo, whenever we have really good labels and some good descriptions in those nodes and those relationships, the LLM could find their way how to create a valid summary of all of that. And the query should be context query. It's not like counting nodes in the database. It's not aggregating, for example, aggregating how many nights would it cost to be 2 days in Paris. So it's not doing any aggregation, any summary, any sums but it's getting to the information, then spreading around, getting all that to create a summary of the relevant information. And for example, this was the Game of Thrones dataset, and you can see like who killed the most people in Game of Thrones series, and that's actually the aggregation query, because what the GraphChat is doing, it's finding like the who killed the most, so it's counting stuff from the actual graph database. Compared to the GraphRAG, like tell me more about X, Y, Z, and then it's getting the pivot, spreading around, getting all the information that's tied to that person, to that initial information, and then creating the summary of it. So you can see pretty much on the same data set, within the same context, a GraphRAG query and the regular aggregation query. So that's what GraphChat can help. Like even if you are doing like aggregations or GraphRAG, pretty much simple GraphRAGs, because more complex GraphRAGs, they usually have way better integrations with pivot and relevance searches. What Katarina was showing with the vector search, with keyword search. We also had a really cool call last time when Josiah showed like how they are doing like vector searches and how they combine all that. Like that's where you want to get more specialized in what you do, and how to get that information back. And this is pretty much like laid down, like the GraphChat and the GraphRAG. So GraphRAG can ask, like, you can see those kind of questions. Like, it cannot give you an answer, how many nodes do I have? Because if you want to get that answer from the GraphRAG system, you should have a text that says, I have 1K nodes in the database. It should be somewhere there for it to extract. Compared to the GraphChat will be able to give you that information. Why? Because of that Cypher generation that's happening. So pretty much you can see the differences. You can see how they are, what similarities they are sharing. GraphRAG systems usually can do only reads. Usually you can do whatever you want, but it's usually the reads. GraphChat, you can pretty much give permissions to it to do inserts, updates, change database structure, and so on. And GraphChat, what it says here, it needs that graph terminology. That's what I was talking when I was showing, like you need to give some pointers, like for the US use ICO code and something like that. Compared to the GraphRAG system, you don't care about those things. Well, the more specific you are, probably the better question you will have, pretty much to any other search system that you use. So it's like it will never go to the full GraphRAG system, but it will be there for some simple queries. But it pretty much gives you a way to to search the database without knowing Cypher, or you can learn Cypher by checking what it generates over there. And like there are so many challenges in this system. So this is the GraphChat. Okay, so we've gone through this flow pretty much I don't know, several times now. So the first one, like the user question, the graph schema, like it's how you create that prompt, how to limit the context window. That's when Katarina was showing, and the error that we received with 8K tokens. And that user, when whoever asked, like, yeah, but how to get my schema in there if it's really large? Like that, those are there are a lot of challenges there in how to make it relevant enough, yet not too large, because LLM will still pick some tension points in there. Like some new models are having kind of 64K token windows. But the problem is, even if you fill it out, it will still use some pieces in there. It won't use all of it because of that attention span that it does. And then you have the graph schema stuff. What if graph schema changes a lot? What if I have a really large graph schema? How to narrow it down? What if I'm missing semantics? It's really hard to do any GraphChat questions there. Then we get to the LLMs, like which model to use, how to configure it. Like, should I tweak the temperature? Should I tweak all the other parameters? Like there's so much there for tweak and to see what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and so on. And then we get back to the Cypher query, which is how to make sure it's valid, it's accurate. It can be valid, but it can give you, I don't know, zero or nonsense results. Complex queries, if you can remember from the demo where we showed, like, can we find the shortest path between two really wide and not directly connected nodes? How to recover from queries. You've seen that example where the new GraphChat was trying to make a union and it failed, and it try again to figure out how to create the final query. And also pretty much, if we are doing several queries, like how do we evaluate which one is correct, which one is better for the final result? And then the final, the extraction of results, again, we get to the window limits, we get to do we get the relevant results? Are we missing something there? Like all those are really challenges, not just in GraphChat, but pretty much in any GraphRAG system. Maybe you won't have the number 4 in GraphRAG, but you will have other challenges like which pivot search to use, which relevance to use, how do I structure my data, and so on. So to get back on the, nicer note, let's see what the future holds. So right now, this is what's released, and as I told you before, it's in community version. Feel free to download, start Memgraph, start Lab, integrate any of the. We are currently giving out a way to integrate with any of these 3 providers. So OpenAI, Oyama, or Azure OpenAI. Use any of the models that they give out and start using the GraphChat. Currently, the context is only using the graph schema. Graph schema in there to get to know your data in there. But currently, what we are working on, and you had a chance to see today, so the new GraphChat on the right side. So the context is now a bit larger. It's not just graph schema, it's getting the conversation history, so it can really pretty much continue the conversation. It has some integrated best practices in there, like, oh, don't use this, use that in Cypher, and so on. It has the error recovery, so if it fails to create a valid Cypher, it will use the error message from Memgraph, use that Cypher, and try to regenerate new Cypher on top of it. And what's really cool is, right now, you're not limited to one model. You can actually create an LLM integration. For example, you can integrate it OpenAI, and you can have 10 different models. You can have GPT-4o, GPT-4o1, or 5o1s with different configurations. And it will make your life way, way, way easier when you want to switch models and see what works better, what isn't working, and so on. Why we did that separation is we actually want to give you an ability to integrate that LLM integration to other pieces of the lab. For example, the query execution. So when you are actually typing the Cypher query on your own, running those queries, and it can help you there, especially if you have any errors, you're not sure how to proceed, like it can help you out to change that Cypher query and see how to move forward from there. And someone asked about the fine-tuning. Actually, so Marco, our CTO, is doing the YouTube videos, so live streams, where he is working with fine-tuning the model to be able to create more accurate Cypher queries. You can check it out. It's really cool. So you have it on the Memgraph YouTube channel, and you can see his way going through all of that and figuring out the ways to get to the fine-tuned model. In the future, so in general, we want to have that LLM integration. So you integrate it into the lab, and then you use it all around, not just with the GraphChat, not just with the query execution, but also data modeling. So you give few data samples and give me the best graph schema model. If I want to search, if I want to use between centrality, if I want to use pathfinding algorithms, if I just want to get sense of my data, and so like it can give you a few ways how you can model your data. It can help you with the data import, like here is my structured, unstructured data, create a knowledge graph, or query modules. Like you want to have your custom algorithm or your custom integration. You type in, I want to have custom integration that does X, Y, Z, create a query module. And you will have a query module, or it can at least help you create a query module. Data results, you get the data results, like give me this in a chart mode, create a pie chart, create something that I can share I don't know, business leaders and so on. Or graph results. I'm not sure if you play with the graph styles, but it gives you a way, like it's programming your own graph styles or how you will change the colors and appearance of your graph results. And it can help you generate that code. And you can say, hey, I wanna show impactful pieces on my graph view. Help me out. And it can create the GSS, which is graph style script, similar to CSS for that. And you can even read about that. We actually did a quick demo where we used the LLM to see how well it can create those graph style scripts, and it did pretty well. I was really surprised how well it generated those styles in there. But finally, where we want to be is here. So how can I help you? That's it. Like you start it up, you have your database, and just go through it. Like find a way how it can help you and figure out the things going on. So yeah, that would be it from the GraphChat presentation. Yeah, I hope you guys liked it. I'm saying again, feel free to download, play with it, give us feedback. The new GraphChat, the one that I showed you on the right, will be in the lab 3.0, which is scheduled by the end of January next week. No, not next week, next year. So in 2 months from now.
Thank you, Toni. I think this was really amazing. Thank you for giving us also a glimpse into the future. I mean, it definitely sounds exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. Having GraphChat in that form would be really amazing. Let's just go through to wrap it up. One really interesting question. I think it's a really good one because it's related to having a RAG, like a vector DB RAG. And now Masi is asking, like, what if I want to use Memgraph on top of this? Like, how is that possible? How can they combine vector DB RAG with Memgraph?
Well, it's pretty much where you want to get the Memgraph part in. For example, Memgraph's strength is usually in that relevant information because of the way how data is structured, because the relevant information is mostly tied to each other. Okay, so because it creates that network of data. So if you are not creating network of data, you won't have any benefit from the graph database. So it's really important to create that knowledge graph so if you have any information that connects those, if you have any different information, but they are somehow connected, you should have that connection in the database. So how it can help you. So when you're doing your vector search, you will probably get those pieces of information where the vector similarity find that in the graph database, run the community detection, and you will probably get something around, something that ties or even adds some additional context, and then send all of that to the LLM. So that's a way how you can actually, you don't need to remove the vector database. So it's pretty good in finding those relevant pivot informations. But sometimes what it might miss is information around which is not tied to anything that you've searched for. Some businesses do need it, some don't. It also really depends where you want to be, but it's really worth trying and figuring out. And also, like in some of the future Memgraph versions, we will be also adding the vector search, so you will be able to do both of those things on top of Memgraph.
Yeah, and I agree that there are various approaches here. Some we've seen someone just embedding a node, others are embedding the whole like sentences like node edges and node, and then see what works best for you. When you embed the prompt, see what kind of similarities give you the best top 10 answers and so on, where which ones find the pivot in the graph the best. Then you can do with Memgraph like one hop to expand that. You can do deep path traversals as well, so you can do many hops, not only one. So it's an interesting approach, and definitely having Memgraph as a knowledge graph makes sense, and Memgraph additional features can make your GraphRAG even better. I hope that answers the question, but in the chat, I also share the resources that we do have. So it's on the documentation. You have Memgraph AI ecosystem where you can read more about the GraphRAG. We also have an on-demand resources where you can watch our previous 2 community calls talking about how others did their GraphRAG. So it's a totally different approaches, but both resulting in good things for them. And I would recommend you watch that because there is not one ideal recipe that we can talk about. There are various ones and various steps included in this process. And as others said, amazing presentation, Toni. If anyone else wants to share their story about their GraphRAG, feel free to contact me. I left a link to Discord as well. And let's everyone stay in touch. Let me know if you built something cool. And thank you, Toni, again for presenting and for having such an awesome demo and presentation. And see you all on the next Memgraph community call.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.